Hi everybody, this is Christina Wallace and I'm going to walk you through the next set of our lab reports talking about the skeleton and how bones are classified, and then we'll talk a little bit about the axial skeleton and the fetal skeleton. So this lab, in the online instructions, there are tons of video links. So here we are at the online instructions for this lab report about bones and the axial skeleton. These instructions are really helpful, and they start here on page 1 of your lab report. There's a great video, page 1. So first off, you're just going to kind of learn about how to categorize the skeleton. And so why do we have a skeleton? So you're going to be looking for some functions, and I've given you a little clue about where to find some of those functions. And then it'll talk about the divisions of the skeleton. This is all straight out of your lab book, so you shouldn't have any difficulty finding these things. And then a little bit about the two types of osseous tissue. We have two main flavors of bone tissue in our body. One is in your long bones and is organized like a bundle of twigs, like if you had a bunch of branches and you made a little bouquet out of them. That's going to be compact bone. And then there's another kind of bone that's found like in the flat bones and the ends of the long bones, and I will leave you guys to find that. Then the next part is kind of learning to categorize or classify the different types of bones apart from each other. This video that is linked right here, this one right here, is great. It's incredibly informative. You can also look at the page numbers or look in your lab manual to kind of double check that information, but really useful and informative video. And it's right here where I've marked in the online instructions, the video for bone classifications. It's nice to have it linked in your actual report. The next piece of your lab report is going to ask you about some typical architectural features of your bones. And so I just want to spend a little moment on this. There is a great video right here, this video right here, that talks about all of these things, and he categorizes the markings on bones or the features of bones in these kind of four main categories, three of which I have given you here. So he's going to say there's a bunch of types that fall into the category of projections, which means something that sticks out from the body of a bone or surface of a bone. Then you have articulations, which are the two like usually shiny facets or condyles, or the shiny places where bones rub together. And then the third category he talks about are depressions or openings. And so I've just kind of wrote down those letters over here. I think that's a really good and useful way to help you kind of tell these different bone markings apart. And this next part is going to kind of go into the architecture of a long bone. So there are some, I think this is spelled out in your book pretty well on page 107. And then I just want to draw your attention to these, these two types of bone marrow over here, red marrow and yellow marrow. And you can find that on the following page in one of the exercises, number 5. We'll describe those two types of marrow to you and where you find them. Most of this vocabulary you'll find in the video and in page 107 of your book. I just want to draw your attention to Sharpie's fibers for a second. Those are kind of extensions of the periosteum that kind of dive into the bone and help anchor the periosteum to the bone, because then your tendons and stuff hook to the periosteum and like grow into the bone. So Sharpie's fibers are connecting periosteum to your bones. On the next page of your lab is talking about cells and stuff. And so this is where your lecture notes come in. And so any place you see lecture notes. It's the section on bones, page 4, page 5. Between page 4 and page 7 down here, you'll find most of the information for this page. Your lecture notes are your friend. So once you kind of understand the cells that help create and destroy your bone, blasts build, and clasts cause catastrophes. That's how I remember. There's some stuff in your lecture notes about the chemical composition of bone. And then in speaking about the chemical composition of bone, you're going to watch this really cool video. This is an awesome video about what happens when you put your bones in a couple of different conditions. And so there's going to be some information about what acid does to your bones. And there's a couple questions about that, and then what bleach does to your bones. And I've highlighted those words in different colors just so you kind of understand that there's going to be two kind of opposite reactions happening with those two chemicals. And the video does a great job of explaining that stuff. All right, then the next piece that we're going to look at is the microscopic structure of compact bone. So we have looked at this before, but now we are just going to be adding some vocabulary. And so in your online instructions, there's a link to the histologyguide.com slide, which I'll take you to in just a minute and show you again. But you can also find information on page 109 and 110 of your lab manual that will help you kind of understand these different vocabulary words. And I just want to draw something for a second. So you have kind of, I'm just going to draw a long bone. It's kind of not the greatest long bone. There you go. It's my little femur bone. So this is a long bone, and it's going to be like a bundle of twigs, you know, where you have kind of these long circular structures that run parallel to the bone. And so each of those is going to have a little dot in the middle of it. That's a canal. And then you're also going to have some canals that come in from the side. So little spaces where something can go, blood vessels and stuff can come in from the side. So these perpendicular canals are going to be Volkmann's canals. And the ones that run parallel to the structure of the bone, these black canals, are going to be Haversian canals. So just kind of notice those two different things. And I'll show you on a histology slide as well. So here we are at the histology guide bone slide, which we've seen before. And I just kind of want to draw your attention to the vocabulary here. So they will define stuff for you, and you can click on every one of those blue links and it'll take you right to the structure in the slide. So let's clear that off and take a peek. So let's click on Haversian canal. And so when we click on a Haversian canal, they're taking us to the opening, this opening right here, where blood vessels are going to live in the middle of an osteon structure. And those are, this osteon structure, you can think of these as kind of the rings of a tree. These are lamellae. And you'd have a whole bunch of these grouped together to form the strength of the long bone. So that's a Haversian canal. We can pick Haversian lamellae. Let's see what the Haversian lamellae are. And so here you click on the lamellae, and what they're trying to point out to you is these kind of rings, the circular rings like of a tree. And the lacunae that are going to have the little osteocyte in the middle of that black space are kind of organized on these rings. So that's lamellae, the rings. Then lacunae, let's look at some lacunae. And so the lacunae are all of these spaces. Remember, we have to have a space because the bone is hard, so in there will be a little cell that lives. And then canaliculi are kind of like the eyelashes of the lacunae. So all these little black squiggly things that come off are little passageways that connect one lacuna to the next. So all of these little eyelashes are canaliculi. So little canals. That's what they are. That's what canaliculi means, little canals. So let's look at the main structure, the osteon structure. Let's look at an osteon. And so the osteon is this circular structure. So these are the little twigs that I said get bundled together to form the strength in a long bone. That's what an osteon is. And it's going to have a haversian canal right in the middle that's going to have blood vessels in it. Haversian canal is here. Haversian canal. I think that's really the only thing that we haven't seen. Oh, Volkmann's canals. So if this haversian canal is running kind of parallel to all these twigs down the length of the long bone, we need to find a canal that comes in perpendicular from the sides. And I'm going to take you to a different slide. Oop, no, I'm not going to do that actually, because there might be one on this slide. Just give me a sec. I'm also going to show you another slide where I know there's a really great perforating canal. It's just one moment. All right, so way up in the top corner, like I'm actually, you can't see the other corner, but I'm kind of right up here on the slide. This is a perforating canal. Do you see how it's coming in from the side and kind of connecting to the central canal? So it's coming in from the side of the bone instead of the middle of the bone. It doesn't go down the middle of the osteon, it comes from the side. This is a Volkmann's, or perforating canal. So perpendicular one is perforating, haversian or central is parallel to the osteons. Yeah, the other slide didn't have a really good perforating canal, so I think that this one right here is kind of our best bet. Just perpendicular as opposed to parallel. All right, so that pretty much takes us through the histology pieces. Now you're going to start learning about bones. And so I want to draw your attention to the 4 videos or 5 videos that are at the end of your online instructions. So just while we're here, the bone slide that we just looked at histologyguide.com is this one right here. And then on the last page of your online instructions, there are these links to 5 videos. These are going to be incredibly helpful. The skull video, this first one right here, is like 9 minutes long. And then the second one is like 23 minutes long. The 9-minute one has a plastic skull where things are colored differently. Very, very useful. If you want to just watch through these videos before you work on your lab, it could be incredibly helpful. But anytime you have to identify skull bones, skull parts, anything, this video is really, really great. The second video here, that one, that uses a white skull, so it's not super easy to see the pieces parts, but it's good to review. And it's longer, so there's more details in that one. And then the vertebral column, this is going to be all about telling the vertebrae apart from one another. So the parts of your lab where it's talking about vertebrae, that's very useful. And then the thorax is all about the rib cage and your sternum and how those are put together. And it's super short. It's like it's like 2 minutes or something. It's really short. And then the fetal skull video. Let's try to find different colors. There. This fetal skull video, again, just kind of goes over the basic architecture. But anyways, these are all very, very useful. So watch these, and I'll talk about them a little bit as we go. So here we start at the axial skeleton. And so I've told you, use the first skull video, the 9-minute one with the colored skull, super informative. So you're gonna tell about the axial skeleton. So this question here is asking you, aside from the skull, what other things make up the axial skeleton? So don't just tell me parts of the skull. Then you're going to go on to learn more information about the skull. So sutures are where two bones kind of form kind of a permanent link. So you can read all about sutures kind of right through here. Page 116 to 122, those are both pages that'll be useful to you. Then the 4 major sutures of the skull, very clearly spelled out in your lab manual. And now you're going to move on to talk about the cranium. And so I've highlighted cranium here. Oops, sorry. I've highlighted cranium here because now we're not talking about the skull, we're talking about the cranium. And that means the case that contains your brain. And so cranium plus your facial bones makes your skull. And there's how many bones are in each. So we're just looking for the cranial bones here. Watch the skull videos, they're incredibly helpful. Then all of these questions about functions of sinuses, hard palate, these are straight out of your book. You know, in the page 118, page 126 of your lab manual, very helpful. I also want to draw your attention to this hint. I want you to look at the descriptions in the tables, because the tables of all the bones where you see the bone names and stuff, it has a cranial bone name, then it says important markings, then it says description. So look for words like cheekbone and nasal septum in the descriptions. That's where you're going to find this stuff. It's not always in the little paragraph print of your lab report. All of that stuff. So just again, look for names of stuff in the descriptions, and it'll help you find the answers to this. Then bone markings. And so on number 15, there's a great example here, so use it. Oops, sorry. So use it. They're going to give you some piece of architecture or some kind of layman's description, and then you have to tell me what bones or what bone goes with that. And so it's very useful now, instead of looking at the description, look at the important bone markings column of your axial skeleton table. And that will help you find the pieces of architecture here that they're talking about. So some of them are going to be openings, and so here a foramen is an opening. It's a passageway where a blood vessel is going to go. Then you're going to have some fossa. That's a depression. Remember, we learned that a couple pages ago. Canal, again, that's a place, a hole for a blood vessel. Process, that's a sticky outy thing. So it's kind of mixing your vocabulary together from those bone landmarks and now matching them to names of bones. Again, this piece next, we're going to talk about vertebral column. Watch the video because the video is super helpful. It goes over every ounce of this vocabulary. The one thing it doesn't talk about much is the intervertebral foramina. And so I just want to remind you, inter means between. So a foramina or foramen that is between two vertebrae is going to be the intervertebral foramina. So you'd have to have two vertebrae stacked on top of each other. You know, you have the body and the little things, then you have another one under here, and it's going to be a little space that occurs in between two vertebrae, and it's going to be where your spinal nerves exit from your spine and kind of wrap around your ribs. So intervertebral foramina is between two vertebrae. Here, just kind of learning again the distinguishing characteristics. Watch the videos, check out the book. Then you kind of move on to look at the spinal column as a whole. Your spinal column has 4 curves in it. And so kind of what are the two curves you have when you're a baby versus what are the secondary curvatures, all from your book. And then at the bottom, it kind of talks about, has you draw. And so you're kind of going to be drawing like a little spine. So you have like, let me put it in a color. Curvature, 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 curvature. And so this is like your cervical, and this is your thoracic, and this is your lumbar, and this is your sacral. And then you're going to look for, when there's something wrong with those curves, you have 3 different flavors. And so something about the location of the curve, so lordosis, might have something to do with lumbar. And this is all found in your book. Where did it go? Where did it go? I wrote a page number down. It's in the bottom. It's in the bottom of I forget what page. Oh, in the like 127, 128, somewhere like that. So that's where you'll find kind of curves and kind of the definition of scoliosis and the different flavors of that. Then bony thorax. Again, this is just talking about your rib cage, your sternum, how your ribs are different from one another. The video about the thorax does a great job of telling all this apart. Your lab manual does too. I draw your attention to page numbers. Writing page numbers down, I do that right now. I won't do it so much as you go progress, because I think you'll have figured out how helpful writing page numbers is. So write your page numbers down. And anyway, so you're going to look at the ribs, kind of identify some vocabulary, and then fetal skeleton. The video is very clear. It's on the last page of your exercise 9, page 134, is all the information about the fetal skeleton. You have a little bit of stuff to identify, and that's it for the lab. So please email me if you have any questions, and happy studying to you. Thanks.